You're looking at live pictures of the NBC's opening session in Beijing. Inside the Great Hall of the People here this morning as we wait for Premier Li Qiang's work report. The government's once again targeting growth around 5% this year. There you see President Xi Jinping making his way along with Li Qiang behind him there to take his seat. How are they delivered and how will they deliver that 5% growth target is going to be in question here this hour.
Yep, lots of numbers to unpack. How they get there is key. Welcome to the program. Good morning from the Asia Pacific. You're watching the China Show. I'm David Ingles with Yvonne.
You're just half an hour away from the opens in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Shanghai. We're also minutes away, of course, as we talked about that speech from Li Qiang. Here's what we know so far about what has been come out. We've taken a look at this work report, and these are the numbers that have been highlighted. That growth target maintaining around 5%, fiscal deficit as well of 3%, which may be a surprise to some in the market who are maybe hoping for maybe more sort of fiscal push to bring that growth target back to around 5%. So the growth, I should say. And, you know, I think from unemployment, CPI around 3%, that certainly is a far away from where we are right now when it comes to inflation.
I mean, we're practically at zero. You're right, Yvonne. And, you know, when you look at 3%, that does indicate, so, you know, a lot of people look at the growth number as indicative of policy intent. I would look at also, and this is almost somewhat different from previous years, the difference between where you are on the inflation environment right now and where they want to be, because that might also indicate some reflationary pressures that they might be looking to build, given this, of course, a lot of other things to track. Special local government bonds, 3.9 trillion renminbi, special sovereign bonds, 1 trillion renminbi, on top, of course, of the 3% budget deficit target you were mentioning earlier.
Yep, as we talked to our guests about, right, it's not really just about that 3% official budget deficit. It's the aggregate that you have to add into when it comes to special local government bonds, also when it comes to those treasury bonds as well, which may be a much bigger number if you add that all up. That 1 trillion renminbi, though, of treasury bonds, that's what we actually broke late last year. So that is in line with what we've been hearing as of late last year right now. Certainly what's going to be in focus is what sort of support measures we're going to see when it comes to the property sector. That hasn't been disclosed as of yet here, but, you know, markets are on tenterhooks on what more details could come. And we're probably going to be hanging on every single word that Li Qiang says, David, because we just got that announcement yesterday. No press conference for the first time in about 30 years.
Yep. From the Chinese premier himself, we are going to get a press briefing, of course, from the various agencies as well. And duplication, I think, is one of the reasons they brought out that they mentioned on the back of that as well. On the back of that decision not to hold a press briefing from the premier. So to Yvonne's point, and as delegates, as you can see, stand up inside the Great Hall of the People ahead of the premier's speech. Investors, markets, business, stakeholders will be looking at everything he says right now. They are singing the national anthem. While we look at that too, I'm just going to go through some of the lines coming through out of the NDRC. So just keep in mind, on top of the work report, we have two separate reports that are also due out, related, of course. One is out of the Finance Ministry, the other is from the NDRC. And they're out with several objectives, sector-specific. Let me start off with EVs, that China will be speeding up the building of battery charging facilities, that China will be looking to stabilize spending on big ticket items like cars. They'll be expanding the national carbon market for more industries. And as it pertains to the property market, China aims to meet the financing demand for property firms. That specific headline is coming out of Reuters right now. There we go.
It's interesting, too, to guard against risks arising from new debts. That certainly is something that they're keeping in mind here right now.
There we go.
With maintaining that 3% budget deficit, right? Because we heard that from Moody's last year when they downgraded the outlook for China of fiscal sustainability. If they actually had something higher, maybe that would have led to some sovereign rating concerns and the like here. But certainly, you talked about, right, new productive forces. These are some of the new growth drivers that Xi Jinping has highlighted time and time again. Certainly, that's going to be a very key focus in the Li Qiang speech coming up.
Okay, yep, and there we go with the Chinese premier making his way to the stage. At this point, let's bring in David Li Daokui, director of the Academic Center for Chinese Economic Practice and Thinking at Tsinghua University. He is also a former CPPCC member and PBOC advisor. His latest book, China's Worldview, Demystifying China to Prevent Global Conflict, joining us right now out of Beijing. Professor Li, thank you so much. As we await the speech out of Chinese premier, I'm not sure if you've been able to go through some of these targets as well. Professor, just your initial take on what we should be expecting out of the economy this year, Professor.
Well, out of this year, I think we will be expecting a turnaround of the Chinese economy as well as the stock market. Why? Because actually last December, the Central Economic Work Conference has laid out the ground for this year's economic policies. Simply put, the economic policy is to speed up economic growth by solving some of the problems of the property market, local debt, and then to speed up consumption and investments. This year will be a year of turnaround for the economy and the capital market, the stock market in China.
Professor Li, just hang on a second and we'll just take you straight back to our viewers right now. The Chinese Premier Li Qiang is speaking in Beijing.
We secured a major decisive victory in the fight against COVID-19. The main goals and tasks for economic and social development in 2023 were accomplished. We made steady progress in pursuing high-quality development and maintained overall social stability, and made social advances in building a modern socialist country in all respects. Overall economic recovery and growth were boosted. China's GDP surpassed 126 trillion yuan, an increase of 5.2%, ranking China among the fastest growing major economies in the world. A total of 12.44 million urban jobs were added, and the average surveyed urban unemployment rate stood at 5.2%. The CPI rose by 0.2%. A basic equilibrium was maintained in the balance of payments. Significant progress was made in building a modernized industrial system, and a number of world-class innovations were made in major industries. C919, a homemade airliner, went into commercial operation, and a domestically built large cruise ship was delivered. And China accounted for over 60% of global economic vehicle output and sales. New breakthroughs were made in science and technological innovation, and we achieved fruitful results in developing core technologies in key fields. Substantial progress were made in science and technology R&D, such as aircraft engines, gas turbines, and fourth-generation nuclear power units. A stream of innovation emerged in frontier areas such as AI and quantum technology. Reform and opening up were deepened. The latest round of institutional reform at the central government level was generally completed. We stepped up efforts to build a unified national market and launched an initiative to deepen and upgrade the state-owned enterprises reform, and adopted policy to spur the growth of the private sector. The global market share of China's export remained stable. The mix of utilized foreign investment was improved, and China continued to gain a greater international influence and appeal. The foundations for secure development were further consolidated. Grain output reached a record of 695 million metric tons. The supply of energy and resources remained stable. China's important industrial and supply chains became more self-supporting. Steady progress was made in diffusing major economic and financial risks. The environment saw steady improvements. Thanks to further steps to prevent and control pollution, the discharge of major pollutants continued to fall. And China's installed renewable energy capacity surpassed its thermal power capacity for the first time in history. And China accounted for over half of newly installed renewable energy capacity around the world. People's well-being was ensured. Per capita disposable income of residents increased by 6.1%. The gains of poverty elimination were consolidated, and the people there also increased. by 8.4% their per capita income. And we also increased the subsidies for compulsory education, basic old age insurance. Over 66 million taxpayers benefited from an increase in the special additional deduction for industrial income tax. We redoubled efforts to renovate old urban residence compounds and benefiting over 10 million households. Looking back at 2023, we can see that as we face an array of interwoven difficulties and challenges, China's economy also did not come easily. Globally, the economic recovery was sluggish, and the external environment exerted a more adverse impact on China's development. Domestically, many difficulties facing our economic recovery and development have yet to be resolved. While deep-seated, long-standing issues became more pronounced, many new developments and problems emerged. The policies and work also faced more dilemmas. However, thanks to the concerted efforts of the entire nation, we accomplished the year's development goals and embraced positive changes on many fronts. It shows again that under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, the Chinese people have the courage, vision, and strength to meet any challenge and overcome any obstacle. There is no doubt that in pursuing development, China will continue to surge ahead, cleave mighty waves, and advance toward a great future. Last year, we thoughtfully studied and implemented the guiding principles from the Party Central Committee, and we have done the following. First, we strengthened the macro regulation and promoted steady economic recovery and growth. In light of grave challenges and the particular condition of the post-COVID economic recovery, we took coordinated steps to ensure stable growth and sustain this momentum and gave priority to consolidating the foundations of the economy. We ensure the proper policies on macroeconomy and also to introduce the timely policies. Fiscal policy also continued to intensify, and macro policy were implemented in a targeted, effective way. We also introduced the policies to promote the industries such as automobiles and other big-ticket items. We also fully leveraged the role of the government investment and also introduced the policies to improve local government debts, and also we ensure no systematic risks arose. Second, we promoted industrial upgrading through innovation and gained new momentum for coordinated urban, rural, and regional development. We stepped up efforts to implement major science and technology programs to build China's strengths in strategic science and technology. We also promoted the new industrialization. We also supported the advanced manufacturing, and also to further promote the new urbanization. And the share of permanent urban residents in the total population rose to 66.2%. And we have seen a further progress made in the rural revitalization. We have seen new initiatives were launched in this regard. Third, we deepened reform, expanded opening up, and continued to improve the business environment. A number of policies and regulations that impeded fair competition were abolished. We adopted separate policies on supporting the development of SOEs, private enterprises, and foreign-funded enterprises. And we launched the special initiatives to settle overdue payments owed to enterprises. We further improved the policies to promote foreign investment and also achieved rapid growth in trade and investment with our BRI partners. Fourth, we stepped up efforts to protect and improve the environment and accelerated the transition to a model of green development. We continued efforts to keep the skies blue, waters clear, and lands clean. We continue to promote the policies and support development of green and low-carbon industries. And we continue to build a first group of cities and industrial parks practicing peaking carbon emissions. Fifth, we made every effort to ensure public well-being and advance development of social programs. We support the key groups to finding jobs, including graduates, and we intensified measures to deal with the Class B infectious disease in COVID response, and we also effectively deal with the Haihe River Basin and other basins' major floods, and carry out rescue and relief operation in the earthquake hit region. And we have also successfully held the 2021 FSU World University Games in Chengdu and 19th Asia Games. Six, we work to improve government performance across the board and redouble efforts to enhance government. We were firmly upholding the authority of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core and the centralized unified leadership, and also be the good practitioners in implementing all the decisions and plans of the Party Central Committee. We improved and enhanced the government's capacity to perform its duties in all areas. We submitted 10 legislative proposals to the Standing Committee of the NPC for deliberation, formulated or revised 25 sets of administrative regulations, and we handled with full attention suggestions and proposals from NPC deputies and CPPCC members. We put a great emphasis on the safety production, and we have seen the new progress made in building a peaceful China. In 2023, we advanced major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics on all fronts. President Xi Jinping and other party and state leaders visited many countries and attended meetings such as BRICS Summit, the 30th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, and other major bilateral multilateral conference. We also hold the China Central Asia Summit and the 3rd BRF and other major diplomatic events at home. We promoted the building of a human community with a shared future and strive to put into action the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative. With these efforts, China has made important contribution to global peace and development. Fellow deputies, with all our achievements in 2023, to General Secretary Xi Jinping, who is at the helm charting the course, to the sound guidance of Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, to the strong leadership of the Party Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and to the concerted efforts of the whole party, the armed forces, and Chinese people of all ethnic groups. On behalf of the State Council, I express sincere gratitude to all our people and to all other political parties, people's organizations, and public figures from all sectors of society. I express heartfelt appreciation to our fellow countrymen and women in the Hong Kong and Macau special administrative regions, in Taiwan and overseas. I also express heartfelt thanks to the governments of other countries, international organizations, and friends across the world who have shown understanding and support for us in China as we pursue modernization. While recognizing our achievements, we are keenly aware of problems and challenges that will confront us. The global economic strength lacks steam, and also the external environment is more complex, severe, and uncertain. And the growth at home is not solid enough, and the expectation is low, and many small and medium-sized enterprises face difficulties in their operation. And we have seen the pressures from overall job creation and employment problems. And there are also weak links for us to further enhance. And there is room for the government to improve its work. A pointless formality and the bureaucratism remain acute. Some reform development steps have yet to fully implemented. We should face these challenges squarely and make every effort to deliver, do our utmost to live up to expectation and trust of the people.
2. Overall requirement and policy orientation for economic and social development in 2024. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the PRC. It is also a crucial year for achieving the objectives and tasks laid down in the 14th Five-Year Plan. For the government to deliver, it is important, under the strong leadership of the Party's Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, to do the following. Follow the guidance of Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. Implement the guiding principles from the Party's 20th National Congress and the second plenary session of the 20th Party Central Committee on the guidelines of the Central Economic Work Conference, adhere to the general principles of pursuing progress while ensuring stability, fully and faithfully apply the new development philosophy on all fronts, move faster, create a new pattern for development, and promote high-quality development. Deepen reform and opening up across the board, achieve greater self-reliance and strength in science and technology, strengthen macro-regulation, expand domestic demand and deepen supply-side structural reform, promote new urbanization and all-round rural revitalization in a coordinated way, ensure both high-quality development and greater security, boost economic vitality, prevent and diffuse risks, and improve public expectations, consolidate and build momentum for economic recovery and growth, continue to effectively pursue higher quality development, and properly increase economic output, improve the people's well-being, maintain overall social stability. These efforts will ensure that we make further progress in building greater country and advancing national rejuvenation on all fronts through Chinese modernization. A comprehensive analysis and assessment shows that China's development environment this year will continue to feature both strategic opportunities and challenges, with favorable conditions outweighing unfavorable ones. China has distinctive constitutional strengths, and our country's capacity for scientific and technology innovation continue to grow. And on the other hand, we should not lose sight of the challenges remaining. The main target for development this year are projected as follows. The GDP growth of around 5%. Over 12 million new urban jobs. Surveyed urban unemployment rate of around 5.5%. CPI increase of around 3%. Growth in personal income in step with the economic growth. A basic equilibrium in the balance of payments. Grain output of over 650 million metric tons, a drop of around 2.5% in energy consumption per unit of GDP, continued improvement in the environment. In setting these targets, we considered involving a dynamic and home and abroad and other relevant factors. And it is not easy for us to realize these targets. We need policy support and joint effort from all fronts. We should adhere to the principles of pursuing progress while ensuring stability, promote stability through progress, and establishing new before abolishing the old. We should also be stabilizing employment and keep expectations economic growth stable. We should also take good care of formulating measures and overhaul and abolish policies regulation that hinder high-quality development. We should intensify counter and cross-clinical adjustment through macro policies. We should appropriately intensify our proactive fiscal policy to improve its quality and effectiveness. We have set the deficit to GDP ratio for this year at 3% and the government deficit at 4.06 trillion yuan, an increase of 160 billion yuan over the year 2023. This year, 3.9 trillion yuan of special purpose bonds for local government will be issued. And also, we need to systematically address funding shortage facing some major projects for building a greater country, advancing national rejuvenation. These funds will be used to implement major national strengths and build up security capacity in key areas. 1 trillion yuan of such bonds will be issued in 2024. The additional government investment is needed in many sectors this year. We also need to take efforts to meet the people's basic living standard and strictly control general expenditures. The central government will increase transfer payment to local governments for ensuring equal access to basic public services. Governments at the provincial level should allocate more physical resources at the low-level government to see to that at the primary level, the basic living needs are met. We also need to intensify the oversight on accounting. We should implement a prudent monetary policy in a flexible, appropriate, targeted, and efficient way. We should maintain adequate liquidity at the proper level and see that the aggregate financing and money supply stay in step with the project dynamic growth and CPI increase. We should work for the steady decline of our financing cost. We should ensure the stability of the capital market. The RMB exchange rate should remain generally stable at an adaptive balance level. We should also enhance the consistency for macro policy orientation, promote overall national development, strengthen coordination between fiscal, monetary, employment, industrial, and regional scientific and technological policies. Policy coordination should be enhanced so that we could form better synergies. In policy making, all localities and government departments should heed and draw on the propositions and views of our parties, and also address the concerns of the enterprise-related policies to build this better environment for the implementation of the policies. In order to fulfill development goals and tasks of this year, we must act on Xi Jinping's economic thinking and devote full energy to promote high-quality development, apply systematic thinking, pay attention to and properly handle major relationships, and develop in-depth plans to advance all areas of work and the overall structure in mind, and also promote high-quality development and make greater achievements. 3. Major tasks for 2024. The CPC Central Committee has adopted overall guidelines for this year's work. We must fully carry them out, stay focused on principal issues, and work to remove development bottlenecks. First, striving to modernize the industrial systems and developing new qualities, productive forces at a faster pace. We should steady foster new growth drivers and strengths and promote this new leap forward at productive forces. Work to upgrade industrial and supply chains. Promote development of traditional businesses and carry out technological transformation and upgrading in the manufacturing sector. We will also promote the development of SMEs that use specialized and sophisticated knowledges. To produce novel and unique products, we will also provide stronger guidance support on quality and standards to create more transparent with the global reach. We will actively foster emerging industries and future-oriented industries, and consolidate and enhance our leading position in industries such as intelligent connected new energy, vehicles, and promote development. We will promote innovative development of the digital economy. We'll formulate policy to support high-quality development of the digital economy, actively develop the digital economy, transform traditional industry with digital technologies. We will step up R&D and application of big data and AI, launch an AI Plus initiative, and we will support the technological and digital transformation to boost the level of social governance. 2. Invigorating China through science and education and consolidating the foundation for high-quality development. We will develop a high-quality educational system, fully implement the party's educational policy, and regard high-quality development as the lifeblood of education at various types of lower levels, and also strengthen fundamental education and improve its quality. We will launch an initiative to upgrade basic education and accelerate high-quality, well-balanced development of urban-rural integration of compulsory education. We will enhance public interest preschool education and pilot comprehensive higher education reform. We will promote the ethos of educators and see that teachers and professionals become competent, and speed up efforts to modernize education so as to lay a solid foundation for enhancing the well-being of our people and prosperity of our nation. We'll move faster to boost the self-reliance and strengthen science technology. And we need to step up research and disrupt and frontier technologies. We will strengthen the principal role of enterprises in scientific and technological innovation, encourage enterprises to increase investment in innovation, strengthen R&D application technologies to promote people's well-being. We will bolster intellectual property rights protection and formulate policies and measures for better application of S&T advances, so as to expand S&T exchanges and create an open and globally competitive innovation ecosystem. We will develop and make best use of talent in all sectors, adopt a more active, open, and effective policies on talent, develop hubs for high-caliber personnel and platform for attracting and gathering talents, and strengthen our support for young talents, and to build this evaluation system based on innovation-related merits, capabilities, and contributions. We will continue efforts to foster a favorable environment for talent development that enables talented people to unleash their full potential. 3. Expanding domestic demands and promoting sound economic flows. We will integrate a strategy of promoting steady growth in consumer spending, remove limitations to cultivate new points of growth, and stabilize the expansion of conventional consumption, encourage and promote consumer goods trading programs, and boost spending on intelligent, connected new energy vehicles, electronic products, and other big-ticket items. Efforts to be made to upgrade elderly and childcare, housekeeping, and other services and make them more accessible. Improve the consumption environment. We'll launch a year-long program to stimulate consumption so as to better meet the people's demand to improve the living standard. We will work to increase effective investment, fully leverage to stimulate the multiplier effect of government investment with a focus on supporting S&T innovation, new types of infrastructure, energy conservation, and carbon reduction initiatives. We will also be implementing the major projects included in the 15th five-year plan. We will also be ensuring that social investment can play a bigger role in more fields.
Fourth, continuing to deepen reform and boosting internal momentum for development. We will further energize the market entities and continue to work to implement the two unswervings for the business of all types to create an equal footing environment. We will further implement the reforms and upgrading of ISOEs, and we will fully implement the development of the private sectors, and also continue to realize the policies and the matching policies in this regard. We will take steps to reduce logistic costs and also to work on preventing and settling overdue payments owed to private businesses. And we will also support and encourage entrepreneurship and support entrepreneurs in focusing on innovative development, seizing the initiative to make bold exploration, investing in new operations, leading their companies to greater success. We will move faster to build a unified national market. We will also focus on the development and also formulate guidance on standards for the development of a national unified market, establish unified rules and institutions covering areas such as the property protection and market access, fair competition, and social credit. We will for sure safeguard the market order and creating a fair competition. We will advance fiscal taxation and the financial reforms. We will step up a new round of the reform for the fiscal and tax systems, and we will further improve the financial support to promote the development in people's lives sector. Fifth, pursuing higher standards, opening up and promoting mutual benefits. And we will promote the increase of the volume and raise the quality of foreign trade for the new business molds, such as cross-border ecosystem and e-commerce. We will promote a healthy development and also foster and increase new growth drivers for foreign trade. The imports of high-quality goods will be boosted, and we will introduce more policies to boost the foreign trade and the domestic trade. And we will continue to further abolish the foreign investment in manufacturing, market access restrictions. We will treat the foreign investors equal and ensure national treatment for foreign-funded enterprises practiced. And we will further upgrade the pilot free trade zones and develop them into a new peace sectors for opening up. We will strive for solid progress in high-quality Belt and Road cooperation. We support high-quality development of BRI and carry out the 8 major measures for supporting them. And we implement a number of small and beautiful projects for improving the people's well-being. And we continue to support the new international land-sea trade corridor. And we will deepen multilateral, bilateral, and regional economic cooperation. And we work with more countries and the regions in the signing and concluding high-standard free trade agreements and investment treaties. And we participate in the reforming of the World Trade Organization and benefit people around the world. 6, ensuring both development and security and effectively preventing and diffusing risks in key areas. We dealt with the greater confidence and about the risks, and we also to further consolidate the responsibilities of the enterprises and the government, and we continue to refine the realistic policies and make sure that the realistic industry can develop in a steady and healthy manner. And we will further improve the policies to diffuse risks. And for the small and medium financial institutions, we'll deal with them In this regard, we will improve the long-term mechanism for preventing and then controlling risks. We will step up our efforts in the housing market to create new models and guarantee the supply of the government-subsidized housing and improve the basic system for commodity housing to meet people's essential need for a home to live in and their different demands for better housing. We will develop government debt management mechanisms that meet the needs of high-quality development and improve monitoring and oversight system, and also to improve our capability to monitoring the risks in financial sector and prevent and controlling them. We'll build up our security capacity in key areas. We'll improve the system for green protection and also to build up the system for storing the resources, and also to make sure the industrial and supply chain operate in a secure and stable manner. Seventh, making sustainable efforts to deliver in work relating to agriculture, rural areas, and rural residents, and taking solid steps to advance rural revitalization. And we will continue to roll out experience gained in the past and to see that we have seen and secured the substantial progress and the outcomes gained in each stage of rural revitalization. We will ensure stable production and supply of grain and other major agricultural products. We will keep the total green acreage stable and consolidate and increase the people's income. And we will make sure that we safeguard the right line layout in the planting, and for all the localities, we will shoulder the responsibility for ensuring national food security. As China has a large population, we must make sure that China's food supply remains firmly in our own hands. We will keep working to consolidate and expand our achievements in poverty alleviation. We will do everything we can to see that no large-scale return to poverty occurs. For the people moving from the hospital areas, we will continue the follow-up support for them, and we continue to consolidate and continue the gains from the poverty alleviation. We'll steadily advance rural reform and development. We launched a second round of contracts that will make sure that the extending rural land contract by another 30 years upon expiration. We will further increasing rural incomes and also pursuing rural development initiatives, improving the living environment, make sure that this is a beautiful place and harmonious place for people to live and work in. Eighth, promoting integrated development between urban and rural areas, advancing coordinated development between regions, and optimizing regional economic layout. We'll continue to boost the new urbanization in a coordinated way and also emphasize on the people moving to the cities. We will actively working on the residents' permanent urban residency to eligible people who have moved to cities from rural areas, and also take care of the migrant workers to grant them a permanent residency and also let them to enjoy the basic public service. New urbanization should be people-centered in every respect, and people can enjoy a higher quality of life. We will pursue better coordinated regional development. We will further improve our strategies for the large-scale development of the Western region, full revitalization of Northeast China, accelerated rise of the Central region, and a faster modernization of the Eastern region. We support the development of Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei, the Yangtze River Delta, and the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macau Greater Bay Area in better playing their role as drivers of high-quality development. And we will further boost the high-quality development of the Yangtze Economic Belt, as well as ecological conservation and high-quality development in the Yellow River Basin. And we will continue to practice the plan on the manufacturing agricultural zones. 9. Enhancing ecological conservation, promoting green and low-carbon development. Acting on the principle that lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. We will make concerted efforts to cut carbon emissions, reduce pollution, pursue green development, and boost economic growth. We will take comprehensive steps to improve the environment, and we will continue to practice the action plan for improving air quality, and we will continue to work on the water resources, improve the quality of water. And we will promote DA practice in different zones, and we'll make sure that we win the battle of the three key areas. We will fully utilize the resources and also motivate people in protecting the environment. We will boost the green and low carbon economy. We will push forward with the green transformation of the industrial structure, the energy mix, and the transportation sector, as well as urban and rural development. We will further improve the policies in support of the green development, as well as relevant market-based mechanisms. We will support development of industry for recycling waste and used materials, and also to build China into a more green and low-carbon places. We will actively and prudently work toward peaking carbon emission and achieving carbon neutrality. We will carry out the 10 major initiatives to reach the goal, and we will also build up and advance the energy mix, make sure that we can ensure the energy supply and energy supply meet the needs.
10. Ensuring and improving the people's well-being and promoting better and new ways of conducting social governance. Acting on the people-centered development philosophy, we will fulfill our responsibility to meet people's basic needs and provide action for those most in need, and make solid progress towards prosperity for all and promote social harmony and stability. We will take a wide range of steps to stabilize employment and increase incomes. And it is estimated that over 11.7 million students are due to graduate from college this year, and we must do more to promote employment for young people and also improve service and assistance to people in flexible incomes and improve people's income and expand the mid-income brackets. We will improve medical and health services. The government subsidies for basic medical insurance for rural and non-working urban residents will increase by an average of 30 yuan per person. Strengthen and deepen reform of public hospital, improve medical services with patient-centered approach, and also promote the preservation and innovation development of traditional Chinese medicines. We will advance the Healthy China initiative and patriotic health campaigns and build a strong line for defense to protect people's health. We will enhance social security and social services. The minimum basic old age benefits for rural and non-working urban residents will be raised by 20 yuan per month. Continue to increase basic pensions for retirees and improve the unified national management system for basic old age insurance funds. Boost the birth rate by refining patent leave policies and improve the mechanism for sharing related labor costs for employers. We will also be building the safety net for ensuring the basic needs for the people. We will enrich people's intellectual and cultural lives. We will gain a good understanding of Xi Jinping thinking on culture and act on it, and promote core socialist values, develop a philosophy, social sciences, press and publishing, radio, film and television, literature and art, archiving and other programs. We will promote the development of a cultural industry and also develop this cultural sector. We will safeguard national security and social stability, take a holistic approach to national security, strengthen national security system, strengthen workplace safety and disaster prevention, mitigation, relief efforts to local communities, and prevent major accidents from happening. We will also be strengthening services at the local level and ensure the legitimate rights for the vulnerable groups. We will apply and further develop the Fengqiao model for promoting community-level governance in a new era to better prevent and resolve disputes and promote law-based handling of public complaints. Crack down legal criminal activities of all types in accordance with the law so as to better pursue the Peaceful China initiative. Fellow deputies, the new mission and our new journey demands new and higher standards for what we do in the government. All of us in the government at every level must acquire a deep understanding of the decisive significance of the two decisions, strengthen 4 awarenesses and 4 competences, and 2 safeguards. We must keep enhancing our capacity for political judgment, thinking, and implementation, uphold party leadership in every aspect throughout the entire process, and also uphold Comrade Xi Jinping's core positions on the Party Central Committee and in the party as a whole, and act on it throughout the entire process of government works. We will fully advance law-based government administration and strictly abide by the Constitution and laws. Receive the oversight of the CPPCC and NPC at all levels, as well as social oversight. We also need to strengthen deliberations and the law-based decision-making. We will also support trade unions, community youth, women's federations, other people's organizations in better fulfilling their roles. Also, we need to make sure that all of us in the government must observe disciplines and abide by the law, cultivate ethical and moral character, fulfill our responsibilities diligently, and work for the people with honesty and integrity. We will improve the government performance across the board, implement decisions and plans of the Party Central Committee, act on the principle of the government's ability for implementation and credibility, and transform the government functions. We will also need to strengthen our work and make sure that all of our work are keeping in line with the Party Central Committee's decisions and intentions. We will also need to improve the government service level and reduce the burden for the premier level governments and enterprises, take down formalities and bureaucratism. We will delegate and enterprise work hard and take solid steps to perform and excel in order to meet the people's expectations. Fellow deputies, we will, with a focus on forging a strong sense of community for the Chinese nation, uphold and improve the system of regional ethnic autonomy, promote interaction, exchange, and integration among ethnic groups, and speed up the modernization drive in economic minority regions, and also strengthen the work related to overseas Chinese and protect the lawful rights and interests of the Chinese national abroad, and dedicate themselves to national rejuvenation. Last year, we made new achievement and progress in national defense and military development. Our people's armed forces fulfilled their missions and tasks with impressive results. This year, we will continue to implement Xi Jinping thinking on strengthening the military and the military strategy for a new era. We will remain committed to the party's absolute leadership over the people's armed forces throughout implement the system of ultimate responsibility, resettling with the chairman of the Central Military Commission, and take critical steps to meet the centenary goal of the PLA. We will strengthen all-round military training and combat readiness, and developed as the 14th five-year plan for the PLA and speed up the implementation of major defense-related projects. The government should support the building of the PLA and the military construction and strengthen unity. We will continue to fully, faithfully, and resolutely implement the policy of one country, two systems, under which the people of Hong Kong administer Hong Kong and people of Macau administer Macau with a high degree of autonomy, remain committed to the law-based governance in Hong Kong and Macau, and ensure that Hong Kong and Macau are administered by patriots. We support Hong Kong and Macau in growing their economies, improve the life of the people, and participate in the development of China's overall development, and maintain long-term prosperity and stability. We will implement our party's overall policy for the new era on resolving the Taiwan question, stay committed to the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, and resolutely oppose separatist activities aimed at Taiwan independence, promote the peaceful development of cross-strait relations, and firmly advance the cause of China's reunification, uphold the fundamental interests of the Chinese nation, and we will work with our compatriots and for both sides to work together to realize the glorious cause of national rejuvenation. We will stay committed to implement the foreign policy, peace, and development. We remain firm in pursuing strategy of opening up of mutual benefit, call for an equal and orderly multipolar world, and China will remain firm in opposing all hegemony and ready to pursue global development initiative, global security initiative, and global civilization initiative. And with other members of the international communities, we will be promoting the shared value of humanities and build a human community with a shared future for futures. Fellow deputies, historical missions lies ahead of us. Let us rally more closely around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, hold high the greater banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and follow the guidance of Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for new era. Let us forge ahead in full confidence and a pioneering spirit of accomplish the objectives and tasks for this year's economic and social development. Let us strive to build a greater country and advance national rejuvenation on all fronts through Chinese modernization.
Okay, there we go. We just heard there from the Chinese premier at the Great Hall of the People outlining this year's work report, the targets, how they plan to get there, and various, of course, initiatives and priorities of the government. Let's get initial reaction as well out of David Li Daokui here, director of the Academic Center for Chinese Economic Practice and Thinking at Tsinghua University. He's also a former CPPCC member and PBO's advisor, and also the author of this book, China's Worldview, Demystifying China to Prevent Global Conflict. A perfect guest, really, to talk us to all these key topics right now. Professor Li, thank you for sticking around, and I know we've made you wait there for the better part of the last hour or so. Is there anything that stood out to you from the Premier's speech?
Well, frankly speaking, I read the draft of the report about 1 month ago, because in China, you know, there is a long process of what we call consultation or democracy before the release of the report. A large number of experts were consulted, so I was among the large number of experts. In fact, I had a chance to meet the Premier himself 1 month before, just last month, before today's report. So the thing standing out to me is that there will be, I think, a pretty aggressive economic target that is 5%. Please notice that 5% this year, 2024, is much more than 5% of last year, because the base year was different. The last year's base year was 2022, was a very slow year, okay? So that's the first thing standing out. The other thing standing out is a pretty aggressive approach to stabilize local government debt. Okay, so much more increase to something almost 4 trillion RMB new debt by the central government issue to support local debt. And also it mentioned that it will find a way to stabilize the financial system, including the developers' financing. And also in the report, it emphasizes the importance of domestic demand in various ways, although it doesn't use the language of what we say domestic demand. So all these things, I think, are very important for us to notice as investors.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned about the special local government bonds of nearly 4 trillion renminbi. You add the 1 trillion of treasury bonds that they also announced as well. So that 3% budget deficit may not look as low as what we're talking about right now, Professor. I'm just wondering, are those three things aligned? Does it set the stage for China to achieve that around 5% growth? Or are we going to see more adjustments later on this year?
It's likely. It's very, very good question. It's very likely for the government to pile up more policies when the year goes along in order to reach the 5% target. Why? Because as I mentioned before, you have to combine this government workshop with another report to get the whole picture. The other report is the last December's Central Government Work Conference. That Central Government Work Conference actually arguably is more important than this government report in terms of economic policies, because the Central Government Work Economic Conference said very clearly that 2024 will be a year to speed up economic growth. It even used the language which was not used for the past 30 years, that is economic growth is the bottom line. You know, in enterprise, what do you say? The profit is bottom line, correct? We often say the bottom line is profit. Yeah. But in China, right, the government says economic growth is the bottom line. Of course, I'm a bit simplifying. There's a little bit modifications before and after the word economic growth. That means high quality growth in new era, whatever. So put in a simple language, economic growth is the bottom line. So in order to reach 5%, more policies might be pushed out if necessary.
Professor Li, with economic growth, to your point, usually that comes with inflation coming back, and the inflation target for the year at 3% is way above where we are currently at just near zero on consumer price inflation. Do you think they can achieve that target of 3% inflation?
Well, the 3% inflation target actually is a target of constraint. It actually implies in the report that the CPI should not go above 3%, rather than trying to reach CPI to be around 3%. Okay. So, but you mentioned a very important point, that is overall the Chinese economy is too cold, almost the opposite of the U.S. economy. So the government is finding many ways to speed up the domestic demand, including what they call urban revitalization. That is to demolish old buildings and build new ones, including making investments in new energy supply, green energy supply, the power, the solar panels, the windmills, and the various energy programs, so on and so forth. So actually, you are pointing at an area the government is trying to work. They're trying to crank up the economic demand to make the economy warmer. Okay, almost the opposite of the U.S. economy. It's very interesting. The two economies, the Chinese economy, the U.S. economy, are always running on the opposite cycles, for whatever reason, the opposite cycles. So this situation, arguably, the U.S. economy is a little bit overheated.
You mentioned about these new energy. The new key word seems to be, David, new productive forces, new growth drivers to kind of help lead this recovery, whether it's in EVs, batteries, biotech, chips, advanced manufacturing. This is coming at a time when the economy is struggling, though. Local governments are drowning in debt. Does the government have the resources to see this sort of process through? Because these are quite long return cycles when you talk about AI, high chip manufacturing, for example.
Yeah, another very good question. Okay, when they say new type of technology or economic productivity growth, they are talking about trying to promote private investors to get into these areas. And these are the areas like new energy, new materials, AI, and telecommunication, new materials, so on and so forth. So the underlying policies are policies to promote private investments rather than government investment into these new areas.
What else do you think is missing from the current policy mix?
Well, from my perspective as an economist, I say this very openly, and also say this to the two policymakers, including our premier, before the report. That is, China needs more and more explicit, more aggressive policies to promote consumption. So I've been proposing a policy to directly subsidize consumption. So, for example, in the coming May, we have a May break for 7 days or 10 days, long holiday for the nationwide. I propose that the central government roll out 1 trillion RMB to co-pay consumers' consumption. Just like in the U.S., when you go to a hospital, your insurance company co-pay your medical bill. So I propose the central government co-pay consumers pay expenditure in order to stimulate consumption. Consumption, I think, to me, is the weakest link of the Chinese economy. Frankly speaking, I'm not too concerned about China's increase of productivity. Yes, China is not catching up with the U.S. in AI, and China is not doing exciting things like Nvidia, the computer chips. However, let's keep in mind, China has a tremendous production capacity in electrical vehicles, in solar panels, in batteries, in electrical motors, whatever you mention, all areas except for the high-tech sectors, China is facing a problem of oversupply of production capacity. What China needs is to promote consumption, and households do have money. Unlike the U.S. households, Chinese households typically save a lot. So it takes central government actions to induce more and more consumers to spend money. When they spend more money, the companies will get more cash flows and more profit, and then the more jobs. So the cycle will restart. Okay, so that's my perspective.
And part of that consumption story, of course, is what we're seeing in the property market. And some of the policies that we've seen so far, Professor, I have to get your take, whether it's lowering mortgage rates, lending white lists that we've seen. Have we seen enough to at least stabilize the market in the near term?
Not enough. More policies, I believe, will be rolled out by local governments. Remember, it's the local governments who are controlling the demand or the purchasing of properties. Many cities, including cities of Shanghai and Beijing, are still prohibiting people like you, if you come to China, to buy property, right? So I have been arguing that all these restrictions on property purchasing should be eliminated. Okay, so I strongly believe, that these policies are forthcoming a bit by bit, gradually. There are many technical details. So all these technical details preventing people to buy property are being released, are being lifted. Okay, so these are the things I think very important to watch. Also, I predict that property developers are being helped. Okay, in recent weeks, you reported at Bloomberg, you reported lots of things. Property developers getting into default with the debtors in Hong Kong. But I believe the central government will very soon put together a program to stabilize the financing of property developers, so that the panic will not spread, so that time cure the inventory of property. Time is on the still, I think, developer side. Give them 1 or 2 years, the inventory will be sold.
David, first, thank you so much for following Bloomberg, of course, and our reporting on property. A final question for you, and I want you to talk about the synopsis of your book juxtapose this against the reality where We have U.S. elections coming up. That's number one. Number two, we heard, of course, unexpectedly so, that China is opposing any separatist movement out of Taiwan, number two. And number three, defense spending. The budget's out, 7.2% increase this year. How do we demystify the China story to prevent a global conflict?
Well, the key thing is to remember, is to know that the Chinese political system has its own internal logic for working, okay? It's not a system of the former Soviet Union. It's not a system of countries that oftentimes you call communist countries. Instead, the Chinese political system has its own logic built on 2,000 years of bureaucracy, okay? So, for example, this government work report, okay, released today, announcing the principle of the people, actually was circulated among a large number of people. I would easily see 2,000 people, okay, experts, to get opinions. And also the Chinese decision-making process, especially when it comes to personnel, is also very sophisticated. In other words, in order to choose, to promote a person to a key position, many rounds of consultation have been done, and also the person in key position have to rotate through many jobs. So all these things, I want to say that Chinese social political system is a very pragmatic. Pragmatic is a very pragmatic, stabilizing, and internally consistent one. Okay, so we discuss policies. You have to keep this in mind.
David, we have to leave it there. David Li Daokui there, thank you so much. Director of the Academic Center for China Economic Practice and Thinking at Tsinghua University. Appreciate the time, sir. We're saying that when it comes to markets, there is a little bit of a sense of disappointment when you take a look at post, of course, this work report. The CSI 300, though, we are still seeing some green on the onshore market. Hong Kong is seeing a different story. You are seeing some broad declines when it comes to the HSI, HS Tech, the like here. So there was sense that maybe, yes, that growth target of around 5%, yes, that was expected. Nothing too new in terms of what we heard from that work report, except for maybe that ultra-long issuance of bonds. Yep. That was a bit of a surprise here and bigger than expected. And then this new slogan that we're hearing about, right? Houses are for living and not for speculation. That line has been omitted for the first time in a while.
From the reports since 2019. For several years right now. So we're looking at a couple of sectors. So sector-specific, chips and defense stocks. Some chip stocks were up. Defense spending, we talked about that, 7%, 7.2% to be more specific there. So these are some of your bright spots across this market. Flip the board to new productive sectors. Keep and remember this phrase. We'll keep referring to this, I would imagine, over the next months, if not years or so. So everything from EVs, of course, AI, smart manufacturing, the new pillars of growth and developing such. And as Yvonne is pointing out very quickly, a glance at property stocks after the report omitting that housing is for living and not speculative, which is relatively a shift in tone and attitude as it pertains, of course, to boosting the beleaguered property sector. All right, plenty more ahead. This is Bloomberg.
In setting these targets, we considered involving a dynamic and home and abroad and other relevant factors. And it is not easy for us to realize these targets. We need policy support and joint effort from all fronts.
The Chinese Premier Li Qiang, they're speaking at the opening of the National People's Congress. Joining us now from Beijing is our very own Chief North Asia correspondent, Stephen Engle, who is outside the Great Hall of the People. And Steve, I know you watched that and we're listening to this speech very closely. What are some of the key takeaways for you?
Yeah, the delegates are going to start coming down the steps pretty soon if they haven't already. Of course, it is snowing now here in Beijing on March 5th, a little bit of a late snowfall, but interesting comments nonetheless from Li Qiang, his first work report. Interesting, not necessarily because he gave a lot of new detail, but interesting because he's fairly confident that they can stoke some growth without, restoking those debt burdens at the local level. And we talked about that ratio of budget deficit to GDP of being 3%, but on top, as Yvonne, you mentioned, rightfully so, the importance of these special longer-term bonds. Only the fourth time, I believe, in 26 years. It's $1 trillion yuan. So that will help out. These are central government bonds, and that, to me, clearly indicates that they do not want to further burden the finances at the local government level, which have been absolutely battered by the property downturn, the lack of land sales, if you will, and also 3 years of punishing expenses during COVID-0. So on the fiscal front, yeah, no big bang proposal in this work report, but slow steadiness and fiscal responsibility and limiting or de-risking and deleveraging is still going to be a primary focus, but still delivering around 5% GDP growth and also delivering CPI, consumer price index inflation of about 3%. So fairly bullish on that. They can and do have the tools to rekindle growth. Obviously, 2023 was extremely punishing across the board for the private sector, anyone holding a mortgage and the like, and anyone wishing to get onto the gravy train of property. It was very punishing. He did talk about trying to get into the root causes of the debt and property problems, but did not necessarily outline the specifics. I would assume that more policy measures to support the property market and also rein in debt will be coming down the pike. And the last thing that stood out to me, obviously, was the defense budget increase of 7.2%. That's the biggest increase in some 5 years. That's something, obviously, regional neighbors will be watching. The United States will be watching. Taiwan definitely will be watching that, as well as China continues to modernize its military ambitions.
Stephen Engle, keep warm. Keep warm out there. Of course, outside the Great Hall of the People at the Capitol in Beijing, our Chief North Asia correspondent there. Joining us now is Victor Shih, Director of the 21st Century China Center at the University of California, San Diego, joining us to talk us through this. Victor, a pleasure to have you on the show, and certainly quite a day. Lots to unpack here. This is really where it comes together for you, the economy, the social contract, and the political structure. Let me start off with your initial reaction. A lot of the talk in the last hour was on the economy. Anything that stood out to you, sir?
Yeah, I also, as some of you may know, I've studied China's local government debt dynamic very carefully over the years. We just published a new report at the 21st Century China Center recently on that very same issue. To me, I think, despite the fact that there's going to be 3.9 trillion in new issuance of local debt, it doesn't sound to me enough to roll over all the debt that's going to mature this year, as well as to finance new economic activities. By our calculation, just in the first half of this year, we're going to see trillions of local government debt mature. So all that has to be rolled over, or most of it. Some of the local governments have the ability to repay the debt, of course, but the vast majority, they do not. I think, we're seeing some of the not so enthusiastic reaction from the market, because the 3% central deficit level, even with the 1 trillion in special sovereign bonds and the 3.9 trillion in local government debt, all that just do not look like it's enough to both roll over all the debt that's going to come due this year, as well as to finance a meaningful increase in budgetary outlay.
Is it still a sign, though? Can we take some good news that maybe fiscal strategy coming through from policymakers is shifting in some ways, that they're at least lessening the burden on local governments, just given how they're still drowning in debt right now?
Yeah, no. So I think, but this comes out of, I would say, almost desperation. I mean, the local fiscal situation was really not good by the beginning of 2023. And so the central policymakers knew that they had to do something different. So we do see increasingly the central budget, which the technocrats have been trying to protect the balance sheet of the central government for decades and decades. I mean, this goes back all the way to Chen Yun in the 1980s, and they had managed to really preserve a very healthy balance sheet for the central government. But starting last year and into this year, they had to begin to use sizable amount of the central balance sheet to subsidize local debt repayment because local governments simply do not have the ability to do so anymore.
Victor, longer term, just taking a look at the economic model, because notions of the economic model have been challenged in the last year, given the weakness and the cyclical weakness within a structural challenge. Let's put it that way. The fact that local governments are still operating with their respective growth targets, and we're here obsessing about what that growth target looks like from a central government perspective. The fact that the NDRC is loosely referred to as an economic planner. And I'm trying to get to the point here where, do you see over the foreseeable future the China needing to move away from what it still seems to be largely centrally planned economy of something that's very complex, or is this model still necessary at this point?
I think from an investment perspective, it has become more centralized just because real estate investment had a lot of problems, obviously the over leveraging, et cetera, but it was mostly a market driven dynamic, right? So to the extent that property developers believed that there would be demand for real estate in various localities, they would try to secure bank loans, build the buildings. Of course, some of the financial regulations were not observed all the time, but it was mostly a market driven process. But now, as property development, property investment fell off very precipitously starting 2 years ago, the replacement for that is mainly centrally directed infrastructure projects and, of course, industrial investment that's heavily subsidized by central policies. So I think we are seeing a Chinese economy that is just numerically more driven by state policies as opposed to market dynamic. Of course, there's still one part that's very dynamic that's still mostly, I would say, market driven, which is the global demand for Chinese manufactured goods. And we do see that in some sectors like EVs, like batteries, there's very healthy demand for Chinese produced goods. And that's really driven by the global marketplace. So I think that part of China's economy continues to be quite healthy.
And Victor, I mean, it seems like the government is really pouring a lot of money into those high-end manufacturing sectors here. New productive forces, as they call it. But it's also, you're seeing, areas where you're seeing overcapacity in the EV sector. You're getting to increasing trade tensions with the U.S. and Europe as well. So what do these new productive forces mean for industrial policy moving forward?
Yeah, I think the problem is, I think on the demand side is relatively market driven, but on the investment side in these industrial sectors is driven by industrial policy. So that has led to some overcapacity, which erodes profitability even for some of the champion firms in those sectors. Of course, some of these firms, they have sort of a monopoly position, so they're doing fine. I mean, I'm not an expert in individual names, so I won't name names. But, some of them clearly are doing fine. Others, they're gaining market share, but their profit level is not especially high. Yeah.
Victor, we'll have more. Let's talk more in the next block here. Victor Shih from the University of California, San Diego. He's staying with us. We got plenty more ahead. This is Bloomberg.
It is encouraging to see the market's positive response to our efforts in the transformation of the Japanese economy. This year is a critical time for this trend to take root. The government is committed to achieving a virtuous cycle that includes structural wage increases.
There you go. That was Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida speaking yesterday after the Nikkei 225 The index topping 40,000 for the very first time ever. Markets right now, we're just about headed into the lunch break over there in Tokyo. We're just a little bit below that level, pulling back about 170 points, but still, who would have imagined we'd be at even 30,000 handle on this market, 150.50 on dollar yen, 72, and we did get Tokyo inflation, by the way, in case you missed that earlier on.
Hot.
Yeah, the headline figure coming in above expectations there.
Yep, so certainly that's one to watch. I mean, obviously we're following what we saw in the U.S. when you have these big tech stocks really just falling, like NVIDIA and all the like really sank. So the tech space definitely is feeling the pressure here this morning. Asia, of course, broadly lower here. We've been focusing a lot on China. Your MXAP is down about 0.4%, but most sectors are in the red this morning. Bloomberg Dollar Index is flat. Let's go to April Hong joining us with more from Singapore. And April, what are you watching in terms of how investors are reacting to this MPC?
Yeah, guys, I mean, I think there was a lot more expected by market participants, perhaps more support for consumer demand, for the property sector, and ultimately, even though that growth target of around 5% is seen as ambitious, given how we won't see the benefits from a low base effect, and the budget deficit target also underwhelmed the market, there seems to be, I think, some disappointment overall. We did see that focus on those new productive forces that's being read as perhaps a bit of a doubling down on some of the energy sector, some of the new materials, and as your guest previously outlined, the idea that they want the private sector to step in with investment, but consider how weak business confidence is, really begs the question, how much are we going to get? So this is the mixed performance we're seeing in some of these stocks. Let's flip the board and take a look at what we're seeing in some of the other so-called new economy sectors, such as the EV makers and on the Hang Seng Tech. That is slipping almost 4% now. And EV, as they try to consolidate their position, we see domestic challenges. The likes of XPeng have had to cut prices to boost sales, also in the crosshairs of US-China tensions. And today we're also hearing about how AMD could be facing a roadblock from the US Commerce Department when it comes to selling technology specific to China. So all this at play, it really makes you wonder just how far whatever's been outlined in the MPC will go to boost market confidence. And that is what we're seeing in the markets today for now.
Yeah, that's certainly one to watch. China Wanke, I mean, this story, we kind of didn't really quite hit it yesterday, but the shares have tumbled to record lows. We're watching the bonds also crater as well. What's going on there?
Yeah. I think it bears repeating just how important the property sector is tied to Chinese wealth, that what we're seeing is, really that dent in sentiment, that consumer confidence, the deflationary pressures, and that has actually affected sales, and that in turn has kind of, dredged up these concerns about Vanke's cash flow. And that is why we have these Chinese insurers that have flagged concerns about Vanke. They're saying keep a close watch on it, especially as the word is out that it seems to be asking for payment deferrals from lenders, and that's why we're seeing these shares and these bonds for Vanke coming under pressure. Vanke yesterday hitting a record low, today extending declines, and its bonds have really been coming under pressure as well, guys.
Avril, thank you so much. Wrap up there. All things China, really, and more in the story here. And Avril was just pointing out bonds, right? So I think one of the key takeaways, at least for me, is, and visually you see what's new for this year that we didn't see in the last 3 years or so. These ultra-long treasury bonds will be issuing. That's $1 trillion. That's U.S. dollars. I'm just paraphrasing that as well. That's the blue bit you get. And the last time we actually had this was back as the economy was coming out of COVID, when COVID hit in 2020. And, of course, that was put in place, as you see on your screens. Nothing much has changed as far as the official budget deficit target. And we talked about local governments, bonds with Victor Shih there, who will be coming on in a couple of minutes. But the point is, if you add everything together, that is slightly more expansionary than expected. Although when you look at the growth target, the commentary so far is that there's still a gap, which might leave more room for more stimulus, and certainly that is, Yvonne, what our guys at Bloomberg Economics think will need to be the case. To hit 5%, we'll need to see more than what was announced earlier on.
And keep in mind, last year, back in October, I believe, they had to raise that budget deficit to 3.8%.
Yes.
So will they have to do that again? is a key question. We might not actually get a little bit more answers to this because, as we learned yesterday, was that the Li Qiang, the premier, is not going to be having that annual press conference to mark the end of MPC. We're back with Victor Shih, director of the 21st Century China Center at the University of California, San Diego. So I want to get your take on this, Victor, in some ways, because obviously there's a lot of questions about the prospects of the Chinese economy. The fact that they scrapped this presser, was this a missed opportunity for the premier to boost confidence in the economy, or is it just what the spokesperson said? This is just nothing to see here.
Well, I think there's probably something behind that decision, which probably was not taken very lightly because, as you said, it had been a very good opportunity for the global news community to really ask questions of the Premier of China. In the past, especially when Li Qiang was Premier, he brought a lot of individuality to that press conference, at times revealing information that had never been disclosed before, such as the high number of households which still lived, with income of less than 1,000 yuan a month. That was, pretty shocking news. So I guess if the current premier would like to not have as much individuality, an individual persona, then he would go ahead and scrap that opportunity to reveal himself more to the global media.
Victor, does it create a further information gap between, people close to Beijing and people looking from the outside? Because part of the reason I believe that they also put out was there would simply be duplication, because you're still getting briefings, press briefings from individual departments, including the foreign ministry.
No, I think that was a great opportunity for people to ask questions, right? So, even though we do get a lot of information from the National People's Congress, from the government work report to the press meetings of the individual ministries, but that's not the whole picture, right? So when the NDRC, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Finance answer questions, they can only answer questions about their own agency. They're not answering questions about the whole big picture, which the premier's meeting with the press used to provide that opportunity. Unfortunately, that opportunity is no longer there. And what's really surprising to me is that it seems like it's being scrapped for the foreseeable future. So it's not just for this year. So I think that is a loss for investors, as they think about, the situation in China.
And is it a signal of President Xi consolidating his power ever more as he, embarks on this third historic term, Victor? I mean, what is the next few years going to look like in some ways? For one thing, is there an alternative to the leadership beyond just the president?
Yeah, so I think he has long consolidated power. It's been a couple of years. He continues to do more to consolidate his power. More recently, we've seen, obviously fairly sizable purges in the military. I think Li Qiang scrapping the press meeting may or may not, be related to Xi Jinping's, very concentrated level of power in the Chinese government. In a way, though, I think Xi is in the perfect position for today and for the foreseeable future, because you don't really want to have a viable alternative to yourself if you are the leader in an authoritarian regime. That is a key way to coup-proof, what we political scientists call coup-proofing the regime. So he's done a very good job at that because there really is no viable alternative to him at this point.
So let's look a level below Xi Jinping then. And I know this might sound funny, you've run some models on this in a regression. Who might be the next, or the key officials and names to watch over the next few years that may gain influence within the leadership?
Well, we've seen, of course, Tai Chi, obtaining a lot of both formal power, as a Politburo Standing Committee member, as well as just a lot of power as head of the general office, which is the nerve center of the Chinese Communist Party. So definitely that is, and a lot of people tell me, he is the second most powerful person in China today. He's not especially young. So below that in terms of age, you have Ding Xuexiang, who's today the executive vice premier, who's younger, who was in Cai Qi's position previously as the head of the general office. So clearly very knowledgeable about how the party works, but yet is significantly younger than both Xi and Cai Qi. So that's definitely someone to watch out for also.
We mentioned in that agenda for the MPC that they omitted that line of personnel changes. So we might not get any sort of news on whether we're going to see a new foreign minister or not. Wang Yi seems to be in place for a while. You talked about the purge that we're seeing in particular when it comes to maybe the defense ministry and the like. There was worries that there was instability in the political system. Is that the right way to characterize that?
No. I don't think so. I mean, I think it's my research suggests that, especially when it comes to the military, it had been a pretty well-planned process of consolidating power, which began as soon as Xi Jinping became the Secretary General of the Communist Party in late 2012. He first allied with some of the factions within the military to purge people related to Xu Caiho and Bo Xilai. And once he consolidated some more power through the 2016 military reform, he then turned around and purged other people whom he saw as kind of a threat to his power within the military. And the latest kind of arrest we have seen is just a part of that whole process of consolidating power in the military. We're coming toward the end of that. I think pretty much everyone who's in power are supposedly, very much trusted by him. Of course, there could still be a few surprises in the future, but I don't see it as any sign of instability.
Victor, just final question. U.S. elections are coming up, and the engagement between the two, China and the U.S., while I guess still highly competitive, feels less combative, less contentious these last few months or so. My question there is, if it's Joe Biden that wins, does that trend continue? And if it's Donald Trump, does that trend reverse?
Yeah, I think you've really hit the nail right on. In my recent conversations with Chinese counterparts, and we've welcomed quite a few academic visitors from China recently, as well as we've met with sort of mid-level diplomats who are based in the U.S. All the signs suggest that if Joe Biden is reelected, relationship will maintain the current course of gradual improvement, of course, with some episodes of tension, as we saw with the balloon incident. So things like that will of course continue to happen. But I think at least we can expect dialogue between the leaders and also mid-level dialogues between the ministers and secretaries in the United States on individual issues. Recently, I'm sure you reported on a very fruitful dialogue between the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Minister of Public Security in China on the fentanyl issue. So in another Biden administration, we can expect those kinds of dialogues to continue. Of course, if Trump were to be elected, re-elected, I guess I should say, who knows what's going to happen? And that's a kind of a anxiety on both sides. I think a lot of people on the U.S. side, myself included, are very anxious about that because we don't know what kind of policies he will roll out to disrupt U.S.-China scientific collaboration, which is very important for U.S. innovation. If done properly. Of course, we have to do it properly with the proper safeguards. And that could completely disruptive. Trump policies could disruptive. And the Chinese side is also very nervous about potential new tariffs, et cetera, et cetera.
Victor, appreciate the time, and let's talk again, sir. Victor Shih, Director of the 21st Century China Center at the University of California in San Diego. Right, more on the NPC, and certainly we've been monitoring online reactions to that speech, and in fact right now as should not come as any surprise, really. A top trending topic on Weibo. Currently 62 million views, and this number is changing, as you would imagine, as we speak, and most have posted really supportive messages following that work report. Others also question why the Premier Li did not mention China's unemployment rates, despite the fact that, of course, within the work report, they came up with a job target, of course, in terms of job creation there. But it's what wasn't mentioned. It's also what's making waves.
Yeah, we've been focusing on just what happened when they scrapped this press briefing for Premier Li, and it seems like, you know, they're quite obviously a very sensitive issue. So you are seeing what's not being said. That's because discussions about that scrapping has been tightly controlled on Weibo. If you search only the return post from some of these government-linked accounts, we saw actually many replies were actually censored as well. So it just goes to show certainly there's a lot of talk about it, but we're not really quite seeing it on digital and social media here right now.
Yeah, I mean, as Victor Shih, our guest just now, just pointing out, right, it was an opportunity to show the Chinese premier engaging directly, of course, with local and international media, despite the fact that maybe the other argument, if there wasn't any new information that he would have said anyway, it's just the optics would have been beneficial, I guess.
I think there was also some reports, or at least that, netizens were circling around the censorships, right? They were posting previous years what Premier Li Qiang had said in those previous work reports. So going down kind of like this nostalgia and memory lane in some ways too.
Yeah, well, what is it? The spokesperson yesterday, upon the news coming out as well, immediately came out and said, if I know there are some concerns, I'm paraphrasing here, but you might know the actual.
The worries about opaqueness, lack of transparency. She says, look, not necessary, unnecessary right now. All right, we got plenty more ahead. This is Bloomberg.
The external environment is more complex, severe, and uncertain. And the growth at home is not solid enough, and the expectation is low, and many small and medium-sized enterprises face difficulties in their operation. And we have seen the pressures from overall job creation and employment problems. And also weak links for us to further enhance. And there is room for the government to improve its work.
There's been one story all morning here in the Asia Pacific. China's NPC Li Qiang there on China's external headwinds. Let's get instant commentary and context now from the market. Let's bring in Charlotte Yang, who covers Asia equities for us, on what the market's been saying and the commentary you've seen so far.
Yeah, so far, fund managers we've been speaking to, they don't seem too impressed with what they've been hearing. So for the GDP target, I think what people are saying that this meets the expectation that they do expect the government to dial up measures to support the economy, especially with consumption now that property is no longer, that key pillar to the economy. But I think what caused some people more on the disappointing side is, the 3% budget deficit level, which they see below as from last year's, and also the 1 trillion yuan ultra long on special bond wasn't that extraordinary, and considering it's more focusing on the key areas to the national security. And I think what's really interesting from one is we can see a gap with onshore and offshore trading today, with Hong Kong's falling more than onshore. I feel like foreign investors here are probably more cautious. And also, if you look at some specific sectors, ones that were mentioned during the work report, whether it was baby, like boosting births, or like it was boosting EVs or consumption, sportswear, those sectors actually stocks were falling today.
Yeah.
So I feel like that also shows, how investors feel like, just maybe those policy support measures will not be enough to actually boost those sectors' development.
All right. Charlotte, thank you. With an update there, pulse check of what's been going on, what's driving this China market here this morning. As you mentioned, a bit of disappointment when it comes to maybe some of the details when it comes to some of these industrial policies, the boosted consumption, the like here. Our Asia equities reporter, Charlotte Yang, Hang Seng down 2.5%. This is Bloomberg. All right, another story that we've been tracking for you today. AMD is said to have hit a U.S. government roadblock while attempting to sell an AI chip tailored for the Chinese market. For more on this with our Bloomberg scoop, let's bring in our Debbie Wu, our North Asia tech team leader, joining us from Taipei. Debbie, it seems like this is something similar to what NVIDIA had faced when it comes to their, business in China and the like. Is this quite similar? What more do we know?
So what's happening here is AMD's come up with a special tailored-made chip for China, so that's less powerful than what they can offer their U.S. customers. But the Commerce Department does not agree that this still stays under the current threshold the U.S. government has for what AI chips that are allowed for AI chips. So AMD is in a slightly different situation from NVIDIA. So after the U.S. government set a bunch of restrictions for the what China can get on the AI chip front, NVIDIA has redesigned its chips to fit those restrictions. But now it seems like AMD hasn't been able to quite meet these criteria and then offer its newly designed chip for the Chinese market.
Debbie, I guess the initial question then that investors would be asking is what the potential revenue hits would be. And again, looking at the NVIDIA sort of example, are we looking at the same dynamics at play here?
Bloomberg Intelligence has already come up with a fresh note saying that they don't expect AMD's to get significantly hit because of this news. This is because, well, in the AI chip market, NVIDIA remains the dominant player in the market, and then AMD's sales in the AI chip sector isn't as sizable as NVIDIA. So we are also not expecting that AMD's inability to offer the new AI chip to the Chinese market to hit their top line very significantly.
There we go, the breaking news earlier on out of Debbie Wu here in AMD, our North Asia tech team leader. Very briefly right now, so we're just over about 90 minutes into the Chinese market session in the region, of course, a couple of markets coming online in the next hour as well. Lots of other stories to tell you about in terms of just economic data. So South Korea released GDP numbers earlier on, in line with estimates. Tokyo inflation came in slightly hotter than expectations. Philippine inflation actually came in much hotter than inflation than forecast right now. A pickup. Core, as you can see, 3.6%. And we're also looking at things like Bitcoin and gold, two things to follow. For the rest of the day, we are close to record highs there.
Yeah, I mean, first it was onion, now it's rice costs. It seems to be piling up in the Philippines. We also have Wade Aspet to speak as well, so definitely watching JGBs, the yen, the like here. As, of course, we wrap up our Work Report NPC coverage here, at least for today. But Bloomberg Markets Asia is up next.